Welcome to Aggregates Outputs and Properties. In this lesson, we'll go over the outputs and properties of aggregates. Then we will see how aggregates are translated into SQL. Speaking about the output of aggregates. First, the aggregate returns a list of records that matches the query definition. This list of records has several important properties, such as iterator-related properties, length, and empty. Regarding the iterator-related properties, these allow you to iterate the list of records returned by the aggregate. The current matches the type of the entities defined in the source tab, while the current row number starts at 0 and goes all the way to the total number of records in the list, -1. Another important aspect is that the current will point to the first record of the list by default, and if no record is returned, the current will contain default values for its data type. As for the length, this is the number of records returned, which may be optimized to the number of records being displayed on a screen. The empty will be true if no records match the criterias defined in the aggregate, and false otherwise. Finally, the aggregate also has a count output parameter. The count will contain the total number of records that match the query criteria, which may be different than the length of the list. Each aggregate also has a few properties besides those defined as sources, filters, and sorting. It is possible to limit the maximum number of records to be returned by the aggregate. Note that this max records property does not affect the count output we saw earlier. The underlying SQL query is changed to select the first X number of records. We also have the read-only property executed SQL, which allows us to see the generated SQL for this aggregate. The generated SQL is database specific and is taken care by the OutSystems platform. In the end, although SQL knowledge is not required to create aggregates, these are translated into a select SQL query. This happens during the compilation step, while the module is published. Whatever is defined in the Sources tab will end up in the From clause, while filters end up being concatenated with ANDs to the Where clause. The sort criterias are translated to the order by clause by the order they are defined in the aggregate. Test values are ignored during compilation, since they are only used during development and have no effect at runtime. Regarding the select part, the OutSystems compiler automatically detects which attributes need to be fetched based on the application code. For instance, if only the customer name is used in the application code, then the OutSystems compiler detects that by doing code analysis. Then, the aggregate query will only fetch that attribute. As you change and evolve your application code and use more or fewer attributes, upon compilation the analysis is rerun and the select clause recalculated.